Hey, it's a blessing to have you here with me today as I discuss what I believe to be a relevant, pertinent subject matter that I think all of us at one time or the other we have experienced this particular emotion. So I'm going to go to the Word of God. So glad that you're here. We are going to look at Second Corinthians chapter 7, verse 5 to verse 6. Corinthians is a tremendous chapter, and I believe this word will bless you today. Second Corinthians chapter 7, verse 5 to verse 6. This is the word of God for us. It says, "For when we were come unto Macedonia, our flesh had no rest, but we were troubled on every side. Without were fightings, within were fears. Nevertheless, God that comforted those that are cast down, comforted us by the coming of Titus." Yes, I want to talk to you today about getting a grip on the stress trigger. That's the emotion I want to talk about, getting a grip on the stress trigger. I guess it's safe to say, and the poet describes our generation in such a deep yet profound way, yet he is so right. He calls this generation that we are in, he says it's the age of the half-read page, the quick, mad dash, the dark night with nerves tight, the plain hop with the brief stop, the brain strain and the heart pain, the cap naps till the spring snaps. And it's absolutely amazing how this poet literally describes the time and the seasons that we are in. As you look at stress, it comes in so many different categories. Stress can be literally experienced in the process of parenting. As you try to parent your kids, it can be stressful. Stress can be experienced on the job. There you are trying to make a living, and sometimes your workplace can be so stressful, just trying to hold it, and they just keep on putting more and more load on top of you. Sometimes stress can show up at school. There you are trying to reach your goals and your objectives, yet school can become stressful. In our relationships, in our interpersonal relationships, stress can be seen at times. In the political area can be stressful. Travel can be stressful. And some of us know this so well in the area of our finances, we can literally experience stress. You name it, you can become stressed by it. Life expectancy is diminished because of stress. Many of our illnesses are stress related. You think about it. For example, high blood pressure, certain strokes, migraines, asthma, and the list goes on in terms of our physiological bodies and the impact that stress can have on our bodies. But my brothers and my sisters, people seem to be offering all the time simple solutions to complex problems, and sometimes the healing that we need does not really heal the wound that we feel. See, we are told to relax. We are told to slow down before we break down. We are told to do less, and then we are told that we will live longer. We are told to stay out of stressful, producing situations. We are told to avoid toxic, stressful people who stress us out. We are told to take more vacations, get some fun in your life, sit in a hot tub. We are told to use biofeedback machines to lower your muscle tension. We are told to cry more, get it out of our system. We are told to join some type of group therapy so that we can cathart and get our issues out, so they can be analyzed, so that they can be looked at, so that somebody can offer solutions to whatever we are going through. We are told to get more exercise. We are told to eat a balanced diet. We are even told to drink less caffeine. The list of temporary remedies grow longer and longer every day, my brothers and my sisters. We struggle to find some answer for our stress. Psychiatrists and psychologists have joined the battle against stress. They investigate the psychodynamic reasons why we respond to it the way that we do. What is it about us that keeps us taking more and more on? And the more we take on, the more stress we experience. What is it about us that drives us internally? Well, my brothers and my sisters, the physical reaction to stress has put some of us in a state of high arousal. And we're at this high level constantly. And due to the fact that we're at a 10 at all the time, and we're not coming down to what would be normal functioning baseline, what we experience is burnout. In other words, what I'm saying to you, my brothers and my sisters, the teapot is empty. The circuit has literally blown a fuse, and nothing seems to be working or functioning like the way how it used to. Our physiologically, we are on overdrive. Our foot is on the gas pedal, and we are driving at 100 miles an hour. And you can't keep up that kind of speed without experiencing some kind of a literally burnout. Blood hormone levels remain abnormal. Blood pressure stays high. Cortisol at elevated levels. Insomnia. People finding it hard to sleep more than ever before. And to top it all, impaired memory seems to be the order of the day, because people's capacity to remember seems to be failing them. And when you look at it, sometimes it all is tied in to this one word called stress. I've heard that there are basically 3 C's that some people seem to possess. It's known as hardiness. And hardiness, my brothers and my sisters, that's Hardiness. Hardiness, some people seem to have this particular characteristic. It is the ability to be resilient, and bounce back and not allow the external forces or even the internal forces of life to stress you out. They say that there are 3 phases to this hardiness. One is control, the next one is commitment, and the next one is challenge. I've been looking at the 3 C's of hardiness, and I believe if you are a child of God, you already have these 3 C's, because God gives you control over the events of life so that life does not stress you out. I believe if you're a child of God, God also gives you a sense of commitment, and so that you can literally have a sense of purpose and direction for your life. And the last C is challenge. With God on your side, you can overcome the challenges of life. Yes, God gives you this personality trait, this tenacity, this mentality, this mindset, so that you can walk in victory and not in defeat. Are you walking with me this morning? I just want to talk to you. I want to look at 3 subcomponents of this particular text that I believe will help us to understand how we can literally walk in victory and not allow the stresses of life to stress us out. Let's look at this. Number 1, the reality of his pressing stress. I'm talking about Paul the Apostle, because Paul the Apostle, like you, like us, my brothers and my sisters, he had some stressors in his life. Verse 5, he says, "For when we were come into Macedonia, our flesh," did you hear it? Our flesh had no rest. In other words, I wasn't getting adequate sleep, but we were troubled on every side. Without were fightings, and within were fears. Did you see that? Without were fightings. There was external fighting that was going on, and there was internal fears within. Paul says when he came to Macedonia, our flesh had no rest, but we were troubled. Did you see that word? On every side. Outsiders were bringing conflict, and the outside conflict was seeping on the inside, which was bringing about a sense of fear. I looked up that word trouble in the Greek. It means to be pressed hard. It means to be compressed. It means to be crammed. It means to be afflicted. It means to be distressed. Paul had his stressors in life, like we all do. You see, my brothers and my sisters, when you look at it, there are certain areas that we feel stressed in. For example, your body. And if your body is under stress, you might experience headaches and muscle tension or chest pain or fatigue or upset stomach, if your mind or if your moods are stressed out, you might feel anxiety, restlessness, lack of motivation or focus, irritability or anger. And if it's your behavior, you could find yourself overeating or undereating or angry outbursts or turning to drugs or something in order to deal with the stress. Paul writes about the stress he was under. He was being squeezed on the outside by conflict. And those conflicts were fears on the inside. What fears are you experiencing on the inside today? Well, that brings me right now to this second point, and here it is, the refuge for his pressing stress. In other words, he finds a refuge for his pressing stress. Whatever is driving him nuts, he finds a refuge. The Word of God says, nevertheless, verse 6, nevertheless, God that comforteth those that are cast down. Did you see that? God comforts those who are cast down. The apostle is looking at his situation, and he uses that tremendous word, nevertheless. That word, nevertheless, is the transitional word that literally changes his circumstance. And it's that transitional word that we need to use in our lives as well. Nevertheless means a turnaround is coming. Nevertheless means a shift. Nevertheless means God is about to make a move in your life. When you feel despair or discouragement, you ought to say, nevertheless. When you are down in the dumps and it looks like there is no way out, you ought to say, nevertheless. Why don't you put that in the chat and say, nevertheless, with God on my side, I believe I will make it. You may be down right now, but you can say, nevertheless, I will rise. You may be on a sick bed while you're listening to me, but you can say, nevertheless. You may be wondering about your future, but surely you can say, nevertheless. You may look defeated right now, but you can say, nevertheless. You might look defeated, but you can say, nevertheless, no weapon that's formed against me is going to prosper. God comforts the cast down. The comfort here means, that word comfort means that God literally walks beside you as you are moving through life. Now that's comforting, my brothers and my sisters, that God walks alongside of you. So what Paul is doing, a relief is being proclaimed in this text. A relief. And the relief is, nevertheless, God is walking beside me. Can I look at it one more time? The first thing I said, the reality of his pressing stress. Number two, the refuge for his pressing stress. And number three, the resource for his pressing stress. There's a resource. And the resource is right here in the Word of God. Paul says that God sent somebody in his life when he was stressed out. Now you think about that. He says he was comforted by the coming of Titus. Titus came into Paul's life when he was going through stuff. And the arrival of Titus was not only a relief, but it was a shot in the arm for Paul. Beloved, God uses people to lift us up when we are down. David had Jonathan. Elijah had Elisha. Moses had Joshua. Paul had Silas. Barnabas had Timothy and Titus. When Titus arrived, he had good news for Paul. When Paul saw him, he was literally relieved. Paul was comforted by the coming of Titus. It was not so much by what Titus said, but it had more to do with his presence. Sometimes your presence will say more than words will ever say. God was in Titus. Titus was a physical reminder of the presence of God. Will you be a Titus to somebody today? There's always somebody hurting. There's always somebody stressed. Will you be a Titus to somebody? What are you saying? My brothers and my sisters, here's a simple way. Sometimes you just got to relieve and let go of the stress that you are feeling. You know, for example, if I were to pick up this and hold it maybe for 5 minutes, it's not going to really hurt me. But if I was to hold this for 2 hours, right where I am, and then 3 hours, then 4 hours, and I just keep on holding this bottle of water, eventually, over time, it's going to become heavy, and it's going to become a load in my life. So sometimes you just simply got to let go of whatever it is, because the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it becomes. What's our response to stress? Here it is. We ought to be praying to God. We ought to be praising God. We ought to have planning in a way that does not stress us out. And we ought to pause and rest in His presence. Well, my brothers and my sisters, it's been a blessing sharing the Word of God with you today. You be blessed. Bye for now, Dr. Bair.